Hey everybody, this is Kat the Gamer Gal. I had just gotten back from theaters from watching Ratchet and Clank the movie, and I had a total blast. The film was, in my opinion, amazing. It had the right amount of uh, action, had the right amount of elements in the film that made you think of the Ratchet and Clank world in its entirety. It brought back old faces and it introduces you to new faces that I believe make you feel like these characters genuinely belong in the Ratchet and Clank world. Now, that's not true for even the some of the returning faces because of certain events, mainly voice or things like that. There's even a new face that I don't know, but I don't feel like he genuinely fits. We will talk about that in a second here. We've got three original actors who have been with the Ratchet and Clank series since like the beginning of time. They have returned and they have created such an amazing piece of artwork with their characters and voicing their characters again. It's a phenomenal experience to hear them and watch them interact properly, just like it would be in a video game, but instead in a film format. I believe that this is going to be one of the best films of the gaming world. I believe that this would be one of those films that will fix the whole new, that will give a new meaning to the term video game movie. But before I can give you a rating, we need to dive into the world of Ratchet and Clank. As the film starts off, we are thrown into a particular scene that pretty much sets the basis as to what this entire film is going to be about and what our heroes are going to be facing. I believe that this is actually a very good opening because not only does it establish to us audience what's going to happen, but it also gives us an idea as to what our heroes are going to be up against in this film. Now, we are introduced to Ratchet and Clank in their respectable formats, and I believe that the way that they introduce both these characters, not to each other, but just in general, how they introduce them, is actually a pretty good way to introducing these characters of old. I mean, you got Ratchet in his garage on his planet of Elkin, and then, of course, Clank was created in a robot factory. But how Clank came to be exactly, I cannot reveal, because it is a little different from the original game. Captain Quark leads the Galactic Rangers, and from the trailers and from the start of the film, we learn that, of course, Ratchet wants to join them because Captain Quark is his hero. In the original Ratchet and Clank game, it didn't seem like he was a person who looked up to Quark as much, even though he had his poster. That didn't mean that he was a big fan of Captain Quark. But it seemed that, in a way, he was supposed to be. I think in this film, it really does establish Ratchet as, I guess, quote unquote, a fanboy. Because, that's the best way to explain how he feels about the Galactic Rangers. So, Ratchet tries to find a way to join the Galactic Rangers, and an opportunity rises. And based from the trailers, of course, as you've seen, he gets rejected. But somehow, in the mess of all that, he meets Clank. Now, I'm not going to give everything in the film away. Don't worry. My policy is no spoilers. I don't like spoiling people's fun for this film. I would like to give you my personal experience as to what I felt about the film. So I will not go into any more details on the storyline. However, I will mention a few things about the story films, which was Sylvester Stallone and John Goodman. I was honestly surprised when I read that their names on the posters of the Ratchet and Clank film last night. I literally looked at the posters last night and I saw those two names and they just stood out like a sore thumb. That's how big these names are. And I was a bit surprised, seeing these two big actors' names on this film because I mean, you wouldn't expect these two men to play in a video game film. Now, granted, that does not mean that this is John Goodman's first rodeo with video games in general. He has voiced a character in a video game, although I always keep getting it confused between the words Rust or Rage. Whichever one it is, I will make sure to post that picture so you guys can see which one I'm talking about. Now, they play characters that are affiliated with the Ratchet and Clank universe. However, I personally have not heard of John Goodman's character before. Grim Raz, I think his name is, or Grim is what he called him in the film. Ratchet called him in the film. And Sylvester Stallone plays a character that is actually an original character from the first game. However, you wouldn't recognize this character. The name, probably, but definitely not the character. It turns out the character he voices is someone known as Victor Von Ion. Victor Von Ion was Chairman Dreck's lieutenant, I think. He was a robotic lieutenant. In the first game, I believe he was that big round bellied robot with the cigar in his mouth. And honestly, he looks completely different in the film. He looks nothing like the original model from the video game. In the film, he looks more menacing, which is fantastic. In this film, he looks more badass. In the game, he looked a bit goofy and, I don't know, maybe seemed a bit like a big tough brute. But I don't know, he just didn't seem tough enough to me going back and watching the games. Now, seeing him in this film, the way the character is, he really is like seriously badass. He's like that death-seeking missile type of character, especially if that's how he acts towards a particular character. However, because Sylvester Stallone voices him, and it's not Sylvester Stallone's fault. I think that man is a great actor. I love the Expendable films, guys. I mean, come on, who doesn't love that movie? Or should I say those movies? But I don't know what it was, but it just didn't seem to work for me. I just couldn't get into his character. The same goes for John Goodman, who is a great actor too. I love the movies he's been in. I even loved the one video game that he voices in. Even if it was just a small role, I loved him in that game. However, it just didn't seem to work in this film either. Granted, there was a scene with John Goodman's character that I actually liked because he pretty much helped Ratchet when Ratchet was down. When he was at his lowest point, or at partially at his lowest point, and he gave him good advice. I really liked that scene. Although, just with this other character, I couldn't get into him. I don't know what it was about his character. I liked the concept of what he was supposed to represent. I liked the idea of what he was supposed to do in his role, but I just couldn't get behind him or the other character. I just couldn't. However, that's just my opinion. Y'all's opinion could be different. Now, let's just get away from actors for a minute and talk about other elements of this film. Mainly the weapons. The weapons were amazing, of course, because there was a lot to the weapons that were shown. They showed grenade launchers, they showed bombs, they showed these blade weapons as well. It was like a blade gun. it kind of like Ratchet would shoot it, it retracts, and then he would point in a different direction. He shot it, and it would retract, but it retracted so fast that it split the platform he was standing on. It's just there is just these amazing amount of weapons, and that's what a lot of people love about Ratchet and Clank is the weapons. However, there was one teeny tiny pet peeve that I have about the weaponry. It's not that, the guns are bad, because that's what Ratchet and Clank is all about, is the different guns. The problem that I mainly have was the lack of the traditional signature weapon that Ratchet always has, the wrench. Granted, they do eventually show him using the wrench later in the film, but he doesn't use it as often as he does these weapons that he is given. It's basically it's like with Cloud Strife and the Buster Sword. You can't have Cloud Strife without his Buster Sword. It's the same with this situation. You cannot have Ratchet without his wrench, because that is what pretty much completes the character. Now, like I said, they do eventually show him using it and using it as a weapon like he's supposed to. But I feel like they didn't show enough of that. That's my only pet peeve. Other than that, I think the weapons were fantastic. They had a lot of oldies but goodies, and that's the reason why I thought that the guns were amazing. Now, I honestly don't remember some of these guns in the game, but that's probably because they came in the later games like Deadlock or I don't know. They might actually already be in the new version of this game, which I think is based on this film. Now, let's get into story real quick before I take up too much time in this video. I think the storyline in general was very solid. It was a very good storyline. There was a point in the film that I mean, I knew it was coming, but I wasn't expecting when it was going to happen. And when it finally did, I was kind of like, "Whoa, okay. Why did that happen?" I mean, I understood. I did, but it was kind of confusing. The main really because of the characters on the villainy side. The one being the personal idea behind Chairman Drek. Now, in the video games, Chairman Drek had polluted his own planet so that when he made a new one, he could just repollute it again just for more cash. That was his main goal, was to earn more money by doing these horrible deeds. However, in this film, they don't establish anything about that. They don't establish what happened to the original home planet. They don't establish if Drek was either doing it for the money or if he was doing this genuinely to help his people. That is the only issue with the storyline about that segment in particular that I was very confused about, because they don't say anything. I will say that the Blarg in this film, without their gas masks, look freaking cool. The Blarg in this film, and I'm not talking about Chairman Drake, but I'm probably mispronounced his name, I apologize. But I'm not talking about him. I'm just talking about the Blarg in general. The Blarg, to me, are the comedy relief, besides a couple of the citizens of, and I believe the city's called Metropolis. But it's the way that the Blarg are portrayed, like I said, are very comical. They're very much of like the comic relief. And that's a good thing about Ratchet and Clank, because Ratchet and Clank is based, on some comedy. Based on what some other people have said, they feel like that the comedy for Ratchet and Clank is a bit dry, and I can understand their views. Me, I haven't seen anything Ratchet and Clank related in such a long time that this comedy, this comedal acts that they show me, and I probably use that term wrong, it's refreshing for me, because I haven't seen any Ratchet and Clank material in such a long time. When I saw the very first trailer they released, immediately I fell back in love with the Ratchet and Clank series. And that's the reason why I believe that this film is such a success. Don't worry, we are going to wrap this up eventually. In fact, we're going to wrap this up right about now. Let's talk about the term video game movie. Every time we hear that, we immediately cringe because the majority of the video game films that do come out are just plain, and excuse my French, shitty. We all can agree on that. Well, I can't say all, because there are a few video game films that I did genuinely enjoy. The first two Resident Evil films, as an example. And as scary as it sounds, I actually did partially enjoy the Prince of Persia film that Disney had created. However, I still believe to this day that Disney should not have touched it, even though I love Disney to death. Now, pushing that aside for just a second to talk mainly about Ratchet and Clank again, I believe that this film, just like Final Fantasy VII Advent Children, is the pinnacle of what video game movies should be. With the way that the graphics were done to look exactly like they belonged in that world. The way that the characters were designed to look like it was literally just extracted from the game. The way that you got the actors, the original actors who have been acting these characters out for years. And the fact that you've got literally the original game. It's literally the original game with a new coat of paint. It's the entirety of what the franchise is in a film. That's what's really important about this film, I think. I like to think that this is the pinnacle of what video game movies should be. And I believe that if we keep this pace up with this film as well as Advent Children now, even though that came out years ago, it's still amazing. That movie was still a very good video game movie. And I think that this is just another example of what is the hidden potential of what a true video game movie can be. I like to believe that this will set an example once more to what a really good movie should be that's based on a game. We shouldn't allow games that we love be taken and butchered over and over and over again. We hope, and I sincerely hope, that when people look at Ratchet and Clank, they see a movie that is literally a film that belongs in that world that it came from originally. They done this film right. Granted, like I said, there were a few pet peeves that I have, a few problems with the story, and even characters I personally didn't know because I was an idiot and didn't play every single game and or watch all the games that I didn't have. But that's my own fault, nobody else's. This film is phenomenal. Even with the rating I'm going to give it, I think that everyone, young or old, parent or single or whatever, and I say parent mainly because there are parents out there who are gamers, and if they want to expose their child who is probably also a gamer to a game that they have grown up on, or just a game that they think that their child might actually enjoy in the future, I would suggest them to take their child to go see this film. I'm not suggesting that no one should go see it. I think that it is a film that people should see, and especially gamers, because of what the subject matter is. I mean, granted, a few people probably will hate it to death, which that's fine. That is their own personal opinion. But I say give it a chance. Because as I've been saying earlier in this particular segment now, is that this film literally is the pinnacle of what video game movies should be. If Warcraft is any good, if the Assassin's Creed movie is going to be any good, if the Sly Cooper movie is going to be any good, then let's just hope that Ratchet and Clank will push the boundaries to where it shows them that this is what video game movies can be like. That this is how a film that is based on a game should be. Not everything has to be CG, not everything has to be live action. But it's just the thought, it's the idea of what this film is, of what it's about. And I really do hope that this film does it. If not, then I don't know. With that all said, I like to believe that even with all the amazingness and a little bit of the pet peeves that I have, this film has a solid 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 out of 10 for me. That is my final thoughts. That is my final rating on this film. I would give it a 9, but like I said, it's not the developer's fault. It's not any of that. I think that it's mainly because of my own stupidity of not remembering the games from, I think, Up Your Arsenal and forward. But other than that, I suggest you go watch this movie. I really, really do. And if you form an opinion of where you hate this film, that's fine. I respect your opinion. I just want you to at least go and give it a chance because I believe that this film will finally bring back the true meaning of what a video game movie should be. And I really do hope that you enjoyed my review. Granted, it's probably not the best, but I hope that I said enough to make you excited to go see it and yet not spoil anything for you because, as my policy is, no spoilers. I'm Kat the Gamer Gal, and remember, be cool, play it safe, and stay awesome.